Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum. Welcome to the Septuagint versus the Masoretic YouTube channel. We're going to look at Nehemiah chapter 2, in which there are 20 verses. Beginning in verse 1, it reads here, me, the wine was before me, talking about either Nehemiah was either serving the wine or he had wine in front of him. It says before him. Significant difference in this verse, it reads, and there was not another before him, versus now I had not been before time sad in his presence. So one is talking about in the Masoretic, the emotional state, versus simply no person being present in front of the king. Verse 2, the word sad, for the word sad, the footnote is in the Greek, evil. So the king's asking, perhaps, why is your face evil? That's an interesting thing to think about. How can a face be evil? Maybe it's showing signs of sadness. Well, bad. Maybe your face looks bad, does not look good. Maybe that's one way to understand that. And now there's nothing but sorrow of heart. Footnote for the word sorrow is mischief or wickedness. And dost thou not control thyself? And dost thou not control thyself? Versus seeing thou art not sick. Just going to move this over here. So we can see a clear difference there. Are you not in control of yourself? Do you have self-control? Maybe it's one way to ask, are you well? Versus, are you sick? So it seems to relate to his well-being, the question. Not questioning his character, but that could be a possibility that he's questioning his character. That's being called into question by the king to Nehemiah, his governor of Judea. Alarmed, I was very much alarmed versus afraid. I think those are similar enough. Verse 4, for what dost thou ask? The footnote reads, for whom? So who are you asking this for? Verse 6 is a distinction between a concubine and a queen. So was this his queen or a concubine? Quite different. And then it says the proposal was pleasing. So the proposal seems to be omitted, although that is an addition. So it's a kind of a gray area there. Verse 8, garden. Keeper of the garden versus the forest. The footnote, interestingly enough, reads park. And then it says cover the gates versus make beams for. Okay, verse 10, an addition of exceedingly. It grieved them exceedingly. It did grieve them, it was grievous, but exceedingly is a bit of maybe a stretch. A man was come to seek good versus welfare. So to seek to make their life better, to improve their lives, versus to check up on them. Verse 12, with Israel I told no man what Elohim put into my heart to do with Israel. Verses at Jerusalem. So that's an interesting distinction because he is the governor of Judea versus him just wanting to accomplish something at Jerusalem. So it seems to do, in the Septuagint, it seems to relate to his job, his position of authority as the governor of Judea. Verse 13, fig trees. Footnote in the Septuagint, it says Septuagint has figs rather than dragons. So it does say dragon in the Masoretic, and it says mourned. I mourned over the wall. Versus viewed in the Hebrew there is sabar, which is to inspect or examine. So that is not one of those, you can explain it away and say, oh, that's merely, one of the many multiple meanings in the Hebrew, which have many connotations. For one word will have multiple meanings, and so this is just another alternate meaning. No, there's no room for that kind of justification, or that kind of reasoning. It is mourned. He mourned over the wall. He didn't just look at it. There was a clear emotional expression. Verse 15, we're going to see that throughout the chapter and the narrative, this distinction made between mourning and viewing. Verse 15 says the wall of the brook versus by the brook. So this is a wall. Seem to have scaled it. Continuous difference of mourned again versus viewed. Verse 16, why? The sentinels knew not why I went. So the rationale behind his actions versus whither or where. They don't know where he went. Verse 17, you see this evil versus distress. You see this distress. Okay, closing out. Verse 18, significant difference. I think it's our first one here. It says, I said, let us arise and build, versus they said. So Nehemiah was the one speaking. And the Septuagint versus the people there who were present expressed the following. It says, the source of strength is not identified, versus they strengthened their own hands. So notice their hands were strengthened. It doesn't detail where the strength came from, but in the Masoretic, their strength is their own. They strengthened their own hands. Verse 19, another significant difference, talks about how they came to us versus despised. So let's read the full verse. Sanballat, the Aaronite, Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian heard, and they laughed us to scorn and came to us. So they went to them versus despised us. So it's not enough for them to scorn them already. They're going to despise them on top of that. And that word in Hebrew is bezah, to despise. So that's not open to interpretation to mean anything other than that. There's no connotation in this case as well. But they did come to them. What is this thing that you're doing? Are you revolting against the king? And verse 20 says, we his servants are pure versus will arise. So you see this distinction, this recognition, or at least identifying themselves as pure, perhaps of pure moral character, and perhaps even ritual purity as well, being sanctified, set apart, versus his servants will arise. So there's no identification providing this information of them being pure. I think that's important, that they are pure, because if they are not pure, then they would perhaps be disqualified from building. But they have to be ready and prepared and be set apart, and in this case, pure, as Nehemiah is saying. Okay, so that's all for this video. Thank you very much for your time. Till next time, I bid you all Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum. Peace be unto you, and Maranatha.